Tangge tuje shaje rezon ron junja mada tuje bonjon ba surje lomba dabar jebega shaje jabe jodong guzon zar durje janje dalo naro ma ba mala chuje gambo ba pamo ba jawan dugong ba kaju lama namje da jon je danan dana zara damje da lama laba la ye jizo zon la zon yon den jam zung ala wan den de don jen de begele zo la ge lo chu zon ro war zin je lab de zo chu lam den ro war zin je lab de zo lan ro wa ze war zin je lab de zo Tribai Jizan Javara Zinja Labdozo Kange Denjen Javan Jong Gapa Me Ba Che Ba Me Ba Da Me Ba O Me Bandro Me Ba Da De Do Me Dunje Me Tribai Je Jadan Ba Zoba Zanje Mananje Tamba De La Zanzar Do Tenjen zawa lama jije guzon doja zenlan dada dage julan bede dage dimba dan zenje je don jajen bandra bar zenje labde zo Chemi uzar doje jengrur da mandi shizen obo je dawa tamje zikpa kunchen chi je je nyammin rukon rinchen shan ca lo Nangkwa dang nyambi simchin tamji jidonde dinde lanami bayang da bar zubu sanje je gompang rumbo je tobar sha di chi de dambi ju ganhi sinde dong nyamsi lawan ju nyambi samba chanchon chu de simji ba dang chu nyimbi guncho dang gunlong manar gona simbar ca dini dela gang simbar sabi chu ne Kyobpa Jikten Sumgön gombo teni jinzebe damchi gongpa jikpa teri teni tela tsomdun dang teni dorji song jia dang ngapchu dani jin teri teni te dambo chunkar je tsom nipa kunlan pimpa timder ju tsom sumba andorwa sotar ju tsom jeba lapa chanchuk sim ji tsom teni ngapa sangha ren zindon pa tsom ti yenchu de hyu simbare ta tereng teni tagum ju pa tsom simba te hyu pa ka res
Can you open this window? So please cultivate the motivation of bodhicitta, thinking that may all sentient beings, limitless as space, attain the state of unsurpassed and perfect and complete enlightenment. And for this sake, I'm going to listen to the Dharma and thereafter engage in practice. So cultivate such an unmistaken motivation for listening to the Dharma teachings. The Dharma teachings we are listening to is the Gong Chik, the Buddha's single intention by Jikten Sumgön. It consists of 7 sections and 150 Vajra verses. And so we already discussed the first 5 sections, which is first the vital points of the Dharma wheel. Then second, the vital points of dependent origination. Third, the Vinaya Pratimoksha. Fourth, the training of the Bodhisattvas. And fifth, the observance of mantra awareness holders. And now today we start with the 6th section, which is the section on view, practice, and conduct.
다 따금 주부첨 시반데 다 따와 시에그 요리 공바 시에그 요리 주바 시에그 요리 then the hajanke the thing sapo ke chu cha yong yore jirtang da tamchi gongba jik bande hajanke tusumje sobju tusumje sanje tamji je then gongba then mix karte tumong mayin pe chechu yobotoni gongba ma chik de tin la phab yoba tan ra chik cha de yore ten ni lakpar to da tagum Kyobpa sendu tene tewe chang tene da cha chimbo da karne chimbo cha yong ku baris.
So here in this section, we're speaking about the view, practice, and conduct. And this is a very profound dharma. And so in general now, the Buddha's single intention, the Gong Chik, is the unique enlightened intent of all the Buddhas of the 3 times and 10 directions, all condensed into one. And then within that, the teachings on view, practice, and conduct, for this reason, are a very profound point.
다 ngarang so de chewa sunam chimbo che kare chong yo bare sina dan di tagum Kyobpa shibande ma shebe gong de tene nyecharang hyama ka hengone de jabjing ka chen bo che ke da chaja chimbo namjer ya la so ba ke tene chaja chimbo tan zo ba chimbo songden jo ba ke tene tawa gomba Kyobpa tanda medicine kachu nang yo bari kadin chang yo bari nga chola de ke tene ta tereng arang so ke tagom Kyobpa la kon hyendu tene hinkin jungone yang tela tene da hajanke pinto chimbo kadin chimbo chong yo ba dang tene chinamba ninkin tamjingone yang tene tagom Kyobpa sijite ka ta kan da kan yemi tene tehan ha ko char yo bare ta ten arang so pe sunan chimboris.
And so we are very fortunate. We have great merit because not just before now we come to this section of view, practice, and conduct. A few days ago, His Eminence Gertrude Rinpoche gave teachings on the 4 yogas of Mahamudra, the union of Mahamudra and Dzogchen, in the context of which he gave incredible teachings on the view, practice, and conduct with great kindness to us. And so the teacher who gave these teachings on view, practice, and conduct has been very kind and benefited us greatly. And then you who are listening to these teachings on the view, practice, and conduct, you probably have you heard about it already before now. So we have great merit.
Tene laparto namjun tene jabjeng garchen bo che ke te tamchi gongba chik panang ke karne chewa de so chor lungri nang ne tene ngaran chola kachu yangse nang ke yo bare ten de chama ke namjun tampe chu nda ta za chimbo la long ju yin ba je cha de yore tene jabjeng garchen bo che konre ngoni tene tamchi gongba chik ba la ha chang ke za chimbo nang ke yore tene ngma pula da tara chuda kha mangbo yo bare te tene da Gong Chik khibande za chimbo yemba jela du kunjur do dang tene me da che lobjong da la mexican lobjong do ji tungkin so nyung do cha zang tene kapjigla nde ke Kyobpa the Nimban the Sola. There's Mambo Mibaji Chasonari. Chut Zachambo in a young, Mok Zachambo Hamaone, the Nachasonari. The young Temaniba Parche Mambo Sonari. The Inaya, the knee judging Garchin Bochek, the Tep Mambo Patru, Kajinda Nangde, the knee Chudakatam Jella Teta Tramne, the knee Da Layang, the knee Tamchukumba Chibake, Nyamanda, the knee Nimu Zerden Zamela, the knee Chapta Chajimba, Chadu Yubaris.
So, also normally when Rinpoche, when Gachin Rinpoche teaches, he gives us the most important sections or quotes from the Gong Chik. He always mentions it in his teachings. So all of us have already really experienced and enjoyed not all of these Dharma teachings. And Gachin Rinpoche himself treats the Gong Chik as something very precious from his perspective, because before in Tibet, many different Dharma teachings existed, and the Gong Chik is a very precious Dharma teaching, but then due to the change of times and there being not many people who studied it, there were not a lot of people who taught and listened to its teachings. So even though this Dharma is very, very precious, many people didn't understand that. And then also many other obstacles arose at that time. And so then Gachin Rinpoche, he was able to sponsor many books being printed and then being distributed. So that now then again, they now have an opportunity to receive these teachings on the Gong Chik, which are like sun rays pervading the world.
That the Gong Chik didn't have a Zachambo in Kyobpa Yina. That Zachambo Yimba de, the knee Zevuk Churotamje Semnangla, Put of Goyori, Madoke Zachambo in Seneca Hilla Bay Yana, Pinka Yomarwa. Then when Loju catch here dancing though the Jones are a pola. Mumachi Chudat and Starpachi Jaris. Titina, oh, that Gonchi here gondo, Teni Gonchi you get Yargondo Zen, Tebede, Teni, young Gonchik said Zachambo Hugh, Zimkin Kahos are the soke, Zachambo Zawate Abora, Zachin Zine. Oh, arguments in that Zachambo Hugh, no arguments here the Chuda del Chuni Mayaris, why you get. The Mayar
Chudala, the Gong Rinzin Chuda.
Mari Chudama, the Hiera. Chuda Lambra, Chuda than Hiera. Della Tene, you get the Gonji, you get the Chuni Mayar Mayavarisiva. The Mayar do, then the Chudas in the Hiera, Tinana, didn't change the Tinizon de Chuni, Dario Mariseva. Then the large reason, then the Zachambo in a Pinto Mason.
So the Gong Chik is a very precious teaching, and so therefore it is necessary to be able to offer it to Dharma friends with love. And so because it has to be given away, it has to be offered. So even though it is very precious, if someone just kind of hides them and doesn't want to give them away, then it also won't benefit anyone. There are some stories in Tibet on how this has happened in like those monastic schools, colleges, where the Gong Chik was supposed to be taught, but then they didn't have the text, so they needed to borrow the text, and so then there were some sangha who had the text, and they did consider the text as very special, very precious, which is in itself, of course, a very good thing. It's good to consider it as precious, but then they were also a little bit stingy with it, and they didn't want to borrow it, they didn't want to lend it to anyone, so they said, I will never give it away to anyone. And so then, because of that, because of them kind of sitting on the text and not giving them away, then it never actually, that's why the teachings are never spread. They could not be taught, and then nobody could benefit from these precious teachings.
Tini tandela ta nandong tamjela rikpe taksi jena tini jeya ke ta loma tamjela chiro tamjela tini chiro tamjela tini teta namchu jachimbo yobare tendu tini ngaranso kansachi teni pusum sobo tena inzang tini teta ngaranso pinchun sama jisirang chigo yuris.
So there are stories like that, but in any case, we have a lot of merit because we do have an opportunity to teach and to listen to these teachings and to use our intelligence to investigate the meaning of these teachings, the inner meaning. So many of the Dharma friends, you possess some great intelligence, so you can do that. So because we have all these perfect conditions together, we should really rejoice in each other's fortune.
Haya, tanda tagum jupu tsomdala dorjisong nishoke tinkayo bari. Tande chebala dorjisong kareke ncheke yori shubayina. Tampu chukang jupan rewa sabs. Ta namba sanje bukchu tamje tsurdu yongbayina. Tawas, gombas, chubas. Ta tis nana mandubashi mibari. Ta de tabu tawa gomba chuban de tane longrik tang yang der goya yorila kahe long tarik pat mare juba tang der gobuk chu yang yorila namba sanje pe chunana tane der mugo wayang yori sene de ngahe ke tetawache gomba yik yoris ina yang Jikten Sumgön gesundu ta sanje bichu tamje tsurdun tawa gomba juba sonan doge yore nde ta jubal rale yore sumbari.
So this section on view, practice, and conduct consists of 20 Vajra verses, Vajra statements. And so the first one says, he taught that the Dharma is transmitted by a lineage. The Dharma that is transmitted by a lineage is profound and marvelous. So, all of the Buddha's teachings are included within those three: the view, the practice, and the conduct. And what Jikten Sumgön is saying is that, and these are the Buddhist view, practice, and conduct is transmitted through a lineage. So it needs to be connected to a lineage. And that is in response to others who claim that there are dharmas that appear that are without such a lineage. So there are some dharmas that have a lineage, but then there are some who do not have a lineage. And Jikten Sumgön says that all of the Buddha's teachings, which are comprised in view, practice, and conduct, they all follow a lineage.
Tanda juba danrewa kandabu ina yongo yorisina jo parsin te bowandu sebayina tumba shakja tubala togo yore. Tumba shakja tubani tsayone tani ta tawichani pangum papa ludrup tang Jachin Chupa Chani, Teni, the Samo Tabu Chani, Pangum Papa Ludrup Tang, Jachin Chupa Chani, Teni Tarate, Lopon Tomi, or Te Tabu Venema, Ju Yongoyoba, Te Tabula, juba sejude data bene yongo yobari teni drevo ngaji tikpa tabajina teni tarate dorjin changni tserembe juba ke teni suso ke zabalama pardu juba del wang juba Chik juba, long juba sin, ta tenda vene ma yongo yobaris. Ta te taba vene yonga tela juba lako yore. Te mato ke che soso ke tep chik lo che titina ne te se che ha kon ten te ta che pa mal hie yoba sa tabi che ke jinlap ke chubu jun se je te yong tup ke yomare. Jinlap yong mo taba te jinlap ke ma yi te deba re. Deba mina ta gare yongo yorusina jinlap la ya de chaksa rawo je mi de do brewa. Jinlap sa je chaksa mi de warwa. O te yinzang teni ta yin la pin to par se bala ya. Teni jinlap de la ra le yongo yoba yinzang o ta juba de karchimbo cha de yoris on re.
And so then how does this connection of a lineage come about? According to the causal vehicle of paramitas, this lineage must go trace back to the Buddha Shakyamuni. So from the Buddha Shakyamuni, then two major lineages have emerged. Is the view of or the lineage of profound view, which comes back to Shakyamuni and then was transmitted through Nagarjuna. And then the lineage of vast conduct traces back to Shakyamuni and then Asanga, the Acharya Asanga. And then according to the resultant vehicle of the Tantras, the lineage traces back to Vajradhara and then is gradually transmitted up until one's root guru. And the way in which it is transmitted is through empowerment and through transmissions and through instructions. And so such a transmission is what we call a lineage. And so a lineage is not the knowledge that one gains from reading a book, for example, and then maybe sharing that with others. Because this is not how we receive the stream of blessings. So the foundation of receiving blessings is faith. And if one doesn't have faith, then there is no basis for blessings. So the transmission lineage, therefore, depends on the receiving of the lineage of blessings. And so for this reason, the being connected to a lineage is very important.
Tendra yinzang namjung arang so choga chupju gang dongba yana ngola tarate te yorwa jundep songya yorwa de solo guba jimsi chimbo yozan ten joku yobare teni da karsi juba mina teni chung karen yong yore subate gang la shusimbare de tenda juba mi bug chu jongyong are besina jongyong are is dan de la loju zong yore de loju te kare resin loju tung nong je yore ngoma shila teni aja je yore is teni aja te ke choga de zhong song bare choga de zhong song de teni mong teni ya chapuk jik za la ya chapuk jik na ya chim bare dan dor de jo shibai na teni tarong tena ngu de du teni tenda ta yibda ro ri gandar tenda ke ngaso ke japo la beri da te ta we ke teni mola je longtin ro je ne ta churang ngman dos churang dang churang ngu na teni ti churang choga chol na lhap ma da wa malhap ba jumsin kang re se na churang semda ti chowa te dan rewa tsawane yo mari dung ubechane sen te tabjik ta morang ga jik tubare ta ji te ji dun raw chinam raw ke chinap jena dana parchen raw je mol chongne ta mo ke tani ta te ngene tani dana ri ya de mo ke ti tsek de yanjar morang ke ji du che ne tani tro thap dana je trapong na tro thap tani ma yong ne longba jing dala yong mare longba da de la gebe hini je ke loma ngap ja la shu jing ko lo ko ne yo de bare yo de de mo de la yong ne churang zo ge lopong de dang lopong de ge sun ju ge chu de dang da gebe hini de da de ge sun ju chu de dang churang zon de ba ge yo mare si dong ge to ne ga yang mi bare sin teni mo ka ni de lan ne teni hyabron cham don cham ra teni teni
do cham san karachi do
don cham
kar chap do
gan cham so gan cha de da tena loma se de sa da be da teni dun ra ke je wang ro jer ne teni mo mu chama ge de ya lang ne do cham ne lobun de ne chu xu yan cham ya ne teni chama mo ge ji sin rang sang ra mu ji sin rang da mo chu de le juban ke yo mar wa de sa du ge de kalo jer song chi ro o te ta be ya yo re
so that's why normally when we recite the ritual or sadhana and so on, in the beginning we are reciting a lineage supplication, and we do that because it is very significant for these reasons, because there are many faults that come from not having a lineage, as you mentioned before. So that happened in the past. For example, there's one story about how this happened. There was this woman whose husband had died, and she was very sad and she couldn't stop crying. So she cried and cried, and then she went off and she went into, there was a cave. So she went into this cave and she sat in the cave still crying. And then there was this spirit, like a Kyobpa spirit, who appeared to her, and he gave her like a prophecy or instruction, and he said that don't cry, because there's no point in crying. If you cry, even if you cry, your husband won't come back. And that's because your mind and your husband's mind have no connection at all. That's the reality. So this was sort of an obstacle caused by this Kyobpa spirit, by this demon. But she believed him that there is no real connection. And so then she kept repeating these words that spirit said, and then she started dancing. And so then after that, sometime later, she went to a different place. And there was this Lama, this teacher, teaching to 500 disciples. And then she went to those disciples and she told them that actually in reality, your teacher and his teachings, there's no connection between them at all. And then she started dancing again. And so then all of these disciples believed her, and she kind of converted them, and then they all got up and they stopped listening to the teachings and they all started dancing. So then they all became her followers. And so actually she didn't have any lineage, nothing, no lineage of transmission at all. She was just kind of, she just followed the words of this Kyobpa spirit.
Tate inza ngaranzo kantar ko andale trogo yore trovar sibala topa jule je go yore topa jule je wala yang domba la ra le ko yorwa te inza domba se dom sendu lunga yisum kantar mege wa chubala tsur do ondu tel do na teni ge wala tsne yong bandala dom shi la ko yorwa ten domba ina yang ta sosota domba ni zonde teni lama gibishini Jubane Jubatser, the Rab Hyogo Yorwa, the Sonsanga to Domjun, Yori Domju Yomaris, and Domjun Lakudwa, the Jirtanta, Namba Sanjiba, not Namba Sanjiba, the Pujun and the Yonso Zobak, and Jubas is the Garchimbo Yobaris.
So we need to be liberated from samsara, and in order to be liberated, a realization must arise in our mind. And in order for realization to arise, realization depends on the vows, the disciplined conduct that we have and that we practiced. And so this term vow, it means also restrain. And so we are restraining our body, speech, and mind from non-virtuous conduct and engage in virtuous conduct instead. And so these vows begin with the vows that we take according to the pratimoksha, the individual liberation. And we receive these vows like as a lineage from a guru. So this is then called the lineage of the transmitted vows, which is considered very important in the Tibetan tradition.
Then the Tahigana Shubare, the Gahe Jubala, Dreva Raleg Mari Sumni to Soke, Karela Samno Tamari Sena. Terchu Yorva, that Terchun to Soteni Sosola Babiung Yorva, De Inzang, then the so that Jubal Gohomada Sam Tisano Tansomaris.
So before we said that there are some who claim that there are dharmas that appear without a transmission lineage, that don't depend on a lineage. And what they are thinking is that there are teachings like there is those treasure teachings that kind of descend down upon us, but they don't have a lineage. That's what they are thinking.
That Terchun does Zola, that Kandar Chad Yoris, Naperna. Nima Tabajina, Chitang Juba Tukdin Sunkoyore, Jarwa Gong Juice, Tane Renzin Da Juice, Kanza Nin Juice, Mulam Te Ju, Tane Mar Mulam Wang Ju, Kandro Te Ju, Hyoser Sik Ju is Juba Tok the Dimba, the Tsek Korang la Ju Lango, the Juba Gohoyobare. The Java Gong Jun de Table some Tamayana Chitang did shoot some and that moaned about the Chiba Chagayori. Not so Perna Guru Rumbochata tell a berry serende Chick Sacha Jela Jalajama Gongne, Ra Teni De Chipo Chen Ya Yabaji Maris Ngoma Besa de Gava Bang Yurisina. Churang Ripulong la Bang Yuri. Churang said the Cardin Lemtrochin, Churang Tepa Timba, Tansik Zama, De Loma, Mang Bala, then it Timba the Simjin la Pintonki, Tendrake, Ripulong la Bayong Yuri. That is such a Netandala Bayong Shibande, so Chiku de Jin Zamla. Sama Jin la Raleg Yura, Jin Go Yura, Jujin Tinder said the Goyora. De Zamla Chi De Zamgo Chido, that's such a net sola. Then about Junze Chazogolo, my baby can number tin, the Tungune told the Rugbatzar Ripulongla, a Bayong Yobaris.
And so, how really have these treasure teachings come about? According to the Nyingma, the old tantric lineage, it is said that there are 6 lineages. There is the lineage of the conquerors, the Buddha's mind lineage. Secondly, the Vidyadhara's sign lineage. Third, the human's hearing lineage. Fourth, the lineage of empowerment, of aspiration. Fifth, the lineage of stealing and entrusting to the Dakinis. And sixth, the word lineage of the yellow parchment. So, for example, regarding the first one, the conqueror's mind lineage, And so in general, all the treasure teachings have the same essence. So we do say that Guru Rinpoche had concealed these teachings as treasure teachings in a certain place. And however, it is not just that these teachings were hidden in like an object, like hiding an object at a certain place. So it was not just like that. The actual hiding place is the expanse of awareness. It was hidden in the expanse of awareness of fortunate, karmically destined disciples who possess faith and pure samaya, and who would then again retrieve these teachings from the expanse of awareness in order to benefit sentient beings in the future. So the actual hiding place is the expanse of awareness. And then, of course, there are certain physical places where treasure teachings were hidden, because a condition is also necessary. Everything depends on conditions. Everything depends on the interdependence of causes and conditions. So there was the appearance of hiding those teachings at certain locations, but the actual hiding place was the expanse of awareness.
Taneta ringzing da ju sena Jirdan Rikpa, then the Naransunam Tunduaka Rikpa, there was Rikpa. Zin Serna Kantar Loam Rikpa, the Surn Duyun and Trouble on the Herma Somba, Teni Tinhitin ko Sangaka on the Sena, like General Lasoba, Nyamlin Dang, Joparsinte on the Sena, Timbanya Yala Sobokotone Tinhitin. Tin megeveni jula domyong bandala rinzin zero. Das sosungune data be chakin chang de bandala. Teni ta season rodung to la bandu teni da zamje teni da pa yina teni tune ba da zamgalamni teni yin torne ba la so ba data. Teni ganza ninju sen da dinana sumbana yin rindo tsekurang mo chimdo da teni molam wangju sen du ta gandar molam ke kai dimba darne teni gandar maung lejin che dan chepar kho semando song ya sa mambo yo ater chinang sola de ta ben ka ke dimba dan teni lejin dan che lejin ke yin la che Bell Telasoba Gondodon Yorawa, the Sotamjiang, Jubalara led Yoba. Then Kando Teju Sedu, Teni Ta Kando Tamjela, Kai Goasin, no the Dimba Tamjela, Tepar Sala, no the Medimba Tamjela, Teni Bepar Sao, La Sopetini, Samaya Jats and Teni Terja Beja, Sundo Tetab, Tony, then Deang Jubalara led you ba.
So then number 2 is the Vidyadhara sign lineage. And so this term Vidyadhara literally means awareness holding. So awareness is our mind, our awareness, and holding here means that holding awareness means that one sustains mindfulness and one does not become controlled by the various sense objects. And according to the Vajrayanam, it also means to practice the deity yoga, the generation stage, and so forth. And according to the causal vehicle of paramitas, it, for example, means to practice the 4 applications of mindfulness and so forth. And it means to restrain the mind from non-virtue. So that's the awareness holder or the Vidyadhara. And so these Vidyadharas, they were, so it's called the sign lineage, so sign, because when the time, so that the teachings were hidden as dharma teachings, and then when the time was right for these to be revealed in order to benefit sentient beings, then these Vidyadharas had the ability to retrieve these teachings and then convey them, comprehend and convey them only through the means of signs. So through the means of signs, only through symbols or signs, others could become liberated through these teachings. And then number 3, the human person's hearing lineage, we discussed before, the normal transmission lineage. And then number 4, the lineage of empowerment of aspiration. So an aspiration was made that these teachings will spread in the future to benefit future disciples. So there was an aspiration made that may a future master come who possesses karma, a karmically destined master, come and encounter these teachings, these treasure teachings, and then retrieve them and propagate them, increase them in order to benefit other sentient beings. So also this depends on lineage. And then number 5, the lineage of sealing and entrusting to the Dakinis. So there is a lineage. The lineage of entrusting to Dakinis is that those teachings there's those treasure teachings that were entrusted to the Dakinis' protection, and the Dakinis have the samaya to only give those teachings to proper vessels. When somebody is not the proper vessel, they're not allowed to give them those teachings. That is their samaya. That's also what is meant in the text when it says samaya gya and so on. So, and also this lineage depends on an actual lineage.
Ta khoser tsigju hi bandela je ta to bando chia sagra kain de patang te kanda yong yorisina tini khog tena khog serpo tena ngula tsikje zama do mi dewala tini te khake ke te khog de mela tune tini khake ke chok pa tena se ya ta khake mel da mengo ni pas kandar ta na te bin du ting ne tsikje khar ngar sungdwa ti tsik de char charandu ti tsik de la tin na teni ta ti ter tun de la ta ko poten mambo char ba myong yoris de mu yo ne char ta yong yo ba de cha de yorba ta to ba de kan sa yong yorisena o de in ya ta de ter chu de teni juba la ra le ma do ti kanza korang de chi po simton chal la myong do sam sa ro yorwa tan de yang ta shi kanza de la kanza de term pumpkin te korang le ta karwa din ba kanza cha de yu zang tene ngoma ta perna tarang arang so ning ma ke ti ko la hyo yu du ju pa to du ko la tene goro rom ba chila so ba ke tene korang ke kanza de ke rikpa long la char be ya ba de tene tara hyo ser ke jin se de tene char ba yong yo ba o ta tena re ne ri ma to ke tena mi ba ina tene hyo ser dara tsikju yuna ya tini juba mina tini namba sanje chu yang da ba cha to ko ma ro wa de ta de so je te so mo go da ba cha de yoris de yin zang ko ser tsikju se da nga ni ma we na juba la ra le de yoris.
And the 6th one is the word lineage of the yellow parchment. So how this comes about is that there is apparently a yellow parchment, again like a scroll, where only one single word appears. So there's this empty scroll, and some hold it against the fire, and some also place it in water, and then through that that causes one single word to appear on this yellow parchment. And so then the Dertun, the treasure discoverer, sees this one word, and he is able to compose an entire scripture. Like this word contains all of that meaning, which then is written down in the form of a scripture. And so then some may have some doubts about that and feel that, but this then doesn't have, this kind of treasure doesn't have any lineage, because it just comes, from the a mind of one person who sees one word. But then this particular treasure discoverer, this Dertun, is one of those karmically destined, fortunate ones who, as Guru Rinpoche had mentioned before, we mentioned that the teachings were actually hidden in the expanse of awareness. So then these teachings are retrieved from the expanse of this Dertun's awareness, and then are recorded on paper. So the paper, the parchment, is the condition for this to come to fruition. But still, it possesses a lineage. If it doesn't possess a lineage, just one word on its own, that doesn't have a lineage, and then it wouldn't become an authentic Buddhist teaching. But then, because these very unique, treasure discoverers, who have had these teachings hidden in the expanse of their awareness, therefore, according to the Nyingma tradition, the old tantric system, there is no doubt that this also is a teaching that possesses a lineage.
Ta ju sarma tar de chena teni da dorjin changni jong de ma zabalam ma parda pena tara ngarang so ndugong ka ju la palan chan chumba ina ndugong ka ju tabala chan chumba ina ngarang so namju la ju son dem dong ko yo dorjin chang tello naro marpa mala teni gambopa pamotraba jawan dugong ba la so ba ke ngarang so teni so ka zabla ma pardon dong ko yo ro ta de ta ba je juba de ra le yong yo ri ta juba sen de gong de juba na yin wang ge juba long ge juba chi ge juba re dan de sum ja yo na ya bo ri de zo chi hu wang ju dang ta de chi ju den de ni gar chim bo cha de yo re chi ju yo na wan long ju yo de ban ro cha de yo re de yin zang de ni tara sambo de ju nang de na gar song yo re sina yong tin tam che rab zo jiang lama min na sin tar min song do
Then according to the new tantric system, the lineage originates from Vajra and is transmitted up until the root guru. And so within the Kagyu lineage, for example, the lineage supplication that we always recite of the Drigung Kagyu lineage, we say, we supplicate to Vajradhara, Kyobpa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Khenpo Tenzin, and Lord Drigung. So that also is the lineage that we rely upon. As I mentioned before, the lineage is transmitted in three ways: through the empowerment, the transmissions, and the instructions. And if you have them all three of them, then that is best. But most important is the transmission of the empowerment and the instructions, because when you receive instructions, then within the instructions, the transmission of the reading transmission is naturally contained. So then it says in the Samputi Tantra, even with the perfection of all qualities, existence is endless if one does not have a guru.
Teni yang do Tenzin jar pole kare song yo resina Yuna lana mi pe chanchop jang give shini je kalara luna tingin zinde tajime song.
Then it says in the Samadhi Raja Sutra, Kumaram, if unsurpassable awakening depends on the instructions of the spiritual friend, there is no need to mention this samadhi.
Tene gombo pamotraba ge kare song yore shubayina. Tangbo nyamnyong jina yangs. Ta gom de nyamling de chen je nyamnyong timbu jiba yin yang. Mata jin dang lo dang cong song. Mata baris. Jin nan yin. Lo nan yin. Nyumong ngajar jebe les. Danga la katso chen yang. Jupa mi pa matek lam song.
Then Lord Pamodrupa said, even if first experience arises, and so, for example, experience of meditation, of practice, it is impermanent, like a cloud and lightning. It is the cause of arising of the mental affliction of pride. Even if you boast about your pith instructions, what lacks lineage is the path of the non-Buddhists.
Oh, yeah. Tati od oh yeah. Tati od dorji song niba de karatin sina. Konde chugun rang semnang zam song. Tan de kaps yang tan slog nawa na choba nang do yan de tamje teni slog la yu drum da waje te tabaje mato semla ra malebar ta tunjina Jikten pa pharmo che te ta khelen ko yore te chulo ke tana drumtan zin ba thamje na na te ta khelen ko yore song yin yang Jikten sungong ko sunu da de thamje semla ra le ko yore so.
So then we come to Vajra statement number 2. It says, all phenomena included in samsara and nirvana are one's mind. The various outer appearances that manifest. So some claim that all of these manifold appearances are unconnected with the inner mind. And so this is how ordinary worldly people regard this. But there's also certain religions and spiritual traditions that assert this point. But Jikten Sumgön says that everything, all phenomena are connected to the mind.
Dan de ta darang arang zo je janchuk samnyam sling kin ji ganza yina ta ye be simjin tamje ta number da ba zhoma chunje de pama yin bala tani samna tang ke yorwa ta ba zhoma yin che de yang pama cha yorwe sina cha de yorwes gan sina korang ke sen ko nangola pama dar de nang ndu tani ta pama dar de cha de yobares ta sangha ke nyamni nang du ta pena ji zo ji ram ke nyamni nang du tani ta sunu tam ji yae kang nang ju tam ji la da lam ran yin de gom de ta ta ran cha de yore korang la korang la ta ran cha de yore ta de yin zang tani ngarang zo chi jo parsin tik ba dang rewa ngaji tik ba niga ga wang se ba yin ya na wa tam chi semla ra tok do yo baris.
So somebody who practices bodhicitta will regard all limitless sentient beings, even a little ant, as one's parents. So all beings starting from an ant are one's parents. And it is because And this being really becomes the parent of this end, for example, because this is how this person sees it. And because this is how he perceives it, this is also how it is from their perspective. And then also from the perspective of the Vajrayana practice, when we practice the generation stage, we perceive the outer universe as the boundless palace, and the inner sentient beings as gods and goddesses. And to the one who perceives it that way, this is how it actually becomes. So from the perspective of both, the causal vehicle of the paramitas and the resultant vehicle of the tantras, all appearances are connected to the mind.
Tan nawa sem yimbanda duzi mangbo yorite duzi mangbo cheke drop go yomare. Nawa sem yimbala ngaran soke tinhi ti matin zang chepare. Nawa sem yimbala tinhi tin somayina ti tinhi de ya gomba ngang amperne ta che gomba zandro zondu sanje je gomba te tomro te tomro yorwa. Nawa ran sems. Then slow la che yoban de so slow rang ke ne dong da che la samno de tang so yina yang de rang korang ngola slow ge ngobon de za chen bo cha de ke le ga ji yong yo wa ni ga sem ge nang chon yin ba la ji ba re wa yin na ya manda sa de chorang ge slow ge ngobo je la de ni zo chen zin de slow ge ngobo di Dik wanjur go la churang ta de song de bayina churang ko ala targo yomaris o chung ko ala matarna dene chu dongha parmi de nyanggo an de cha yong go yorwa dongha ne mogo lang kwira ngaranso dongha mogo den ko ala de go sena dan de che gardan ro je cha yong go yorwa korbu kono ran hi de che dongha ke mewab da cha andu deni mewab na de yana nga mewab na de go che go me lamna de churang je uchong ro je re ma do ke yong ta mi ba je was dena yin za nam ja jun de na wan de sem ri san da tin hi ting go de da ga chim bo is.
So we're saying appearances are one's own mind, and there are many ways to establish that, but it's not even necessary to establish that because it's natural. The appearances are one's own minds, and so what it means is that it depends on one's mindfulness, whether or not one sustains mindfulness. So when one sustains mindfulness of appearances being one's own mind, then through the mindfulness of appearances being one's mind, one's practice increases, and this is how one attains the state of Buddhahood. So then if one is focused on the outer aspect, the externally appearing aspect of the appearances, then they appear just in that way. Then one considers the way they appear on the external level as principle, that this is how they actually appear. And then regarding them in this way, then one acts in accordance with that perception. And then this becomes, again, true to oneself. So both of these perceptions are the same in terms of whatever appears is one's own mind. Difference is that when one considers the external objects, the external appearances to have a true existence on their own, if one considers these as most important, and one becomes controlled by this perception, then one does not become liberated from samsara. And if you do not become liberated from samsara, there is no end to suffering. And so we do always say, I don't want to suffer. But then on the other hand, even though we don't want to suffer, we still don't want to let go of samsara. We also want to live in samsara. But there is a contradiction here, because the very nature of samsara is suffering. It is like a fire pit. So for example, if you're living in a fire pit, it is like saying, I want to stay in the fire pit, but I don't want to get burned. So this is, you're just trying to insist on something that is actually impossible to happen. So therefore, no, appearances are one's own mind is something that must be recognized with mindfulness.
That day in the Dibzi Gona Karek Duku Yoresina and Do Lankar Shikpale Namto Pakcha Tripala Manalan Chernang Chernangwa you meet the Semna Natso need Nangs.
So, but then if one still wants to have a quote to establish that, it establishes that, it is said in the Lankavatara Sutra, thoughts and habits are confusion to the people. They appear externally. External appearances have no existence. They are the mind that arises as the various objects.
They in the Lopum Papa Tara Semji Dorji two bars. Then na garrison yore shubayina semto bene jangchop de semnen roa ngapo yin de dan dongharan sini da semle mato jungze mi so.
Then Nagarjuna had said in the Chitta Vajra Stava, by realizing the mind, one awakens. The mind is the 5 states of beings. Their characteristics of pleasure and pain are nothing but mind.
Ta dorji som sumbade. Jumde kejik sambarang zogin so. Ta kar mechewa dio marte kar chewa nang ke chewa ro janjang chang gu yor ta de kar chewa nang ke chewa chik cha yong yu zan ta nga chu nin tin sa go ke ne don de de sung tang de tumo mayin ba cha de yor pa cher jumde ke jik sam ran zo yin sung ne de ta tin lam pen queen nyung nyung cha de yor san je ke song yor be sen song yor is Tenzin da mangbo jege gandra gongo yoresina tang khonde ge jumde shiba de tuyung ringbo shegl che te de go anda oje ngarang so che sang je zon de che ta ringbo jin khor yam bes phacher tata nyamni singkhin ja cha ja na nga tata rang sang je ge sam king ke ding yung khin phacher nyung injure da phacher nyung injure yo mari khopor marang ne nyamni tanda centong bojin yang yujurwa yu tin kirwa de jacha mangbo je nga che chama dang dik chama rawo dang je rewa zang rawo je nga ne de ba mangbo yong go yorwa dan je tin sung gu sun du jumje ki ji sambrang zo yin so.
Then next we come to Vajra statement number 3. All phenomena are the embodiments of momentary thoughts. As all the Vajra statements, we could say that they are the most important of the most important. And so this is another one of the most important kind. And this is actually a point that we have to really make an effort apply some, pay some attention to. And this is also a very unique teaching. And this is probably a statement that very few would have made. But is it the teaching of the Buddha then? Yes, it is the teaching of the Buddha. But what this is saying is that the point is on the momentary, because we generally see the whole working of karma, cause and effect, as a very long, distant process. Or when we think about attaining enlightenment, it's very far away, sometime in the future. So probably most people, there's probably of 100%, there's probably very few who really from deep within can grasp this concept of enlightenment right now. Of course, I wouldn't dare to say that nobody thinks in this way, but probably, I mean, it is possible that there are some with some higher advanced levels of practice, but for the most part, when we think about enlightenment, it is something that we put our hopes in for some time in the future, some future lifetime. So this is more how we see it. But then Jikten Sumgön says that actually all phenomena are the embodiments of momentary thoughts.
And the Jumde Kej Sambaranzo in San you take the Landang Pajan, Samo Yabo, down the Sumba Bokanza Ta Joban Jikten Sumgön the Jumde Tola and Hajang Jumde Taki Travel Tola, Nyam Yip, Nana to take Papa and Nyam Yip Nanki. Chukevena ta nyamli nanki ta ngene che jumde ke ne wap che tracking trawa jeng ngene tolo chu yo ba ke na ban da ngarang chol chol nang te to ko yoren de tal sam tamayna ti jum sing ke perna chap jing ga chin bo che khong ke takpar jumde ke jik sam barang zo yin son ka chu ka du son na te song do de Tampe che yorang azo parpu seu mazuchang kado ni le toa shi se kanza de kanang ni chur tong ya ke chik na zo la pa anji ni tik simju la ngene ke che kandan do ko thol san no kanda thol tang ke yo gap cho da bo de kare yin tna hak te sa ko to ko yorang azo ke tenda yin za Jumde Kechik Sambranzo in Sibandala, some no Hiparjing Matang. During Pochilla check Comjin of Martina, Le Labog Jumde Kechik Sambranzo in the canon is turned to Samarawa. Ra Naranzo ke Namba ke Le Jumde la Yichi Yore Yichi Cheke Yore de Tadong Tipala Naranzo ke Namdo Dang Che Lemde mi parta Tawa Maina Yanchi. Namto yin ko wang ke te yon do du che le jum de yu par ki yi chi de la yi chi teng cho bo je yong ma ta to ko yo ma re yi chi hi ba de yang che dong da ge ke je sam no ma tang wo to ni tak se ta je ya ba de zang ge go chu ko yo ma ra wa yi chi par si ba la deng ro je go go yo re ko na pe na chora cha la je nyo go yo na Jalaji Tsego na company. Chorang gam dang deni tara chichel ram da jala yosa yora tes yongso zubani yapu ji tseyong baina da jala de namina o da ju ta ju o dang nan jala de mdo singne ta mdo si da ju gadu na di jala de tina yang ji dena ayu na san ya chorang company na doba je go mdo Te da Pena nga ke tingwa ji nga tingwan de la songwai na ta nge nga kangpa na ke ta kangpa na ne yong su zo ba xie ping cha ba ce ri da ce ta ngene nga ting cha ta ju ri ta nga kangpa na ma do si te ta be ji le jum de sam ba ran zo yin si ban da la ya jum de ken ro tang ka re re sha jo dan de bu ken de wa kan dan do Drotang Kareja. Du Gaging Matolang Jova Kandavan Rondo. Some no Tondang Jigatoni Jumde the Kanda Yungondo. That the rattle of some no town, then he Tanda which tune or that the Reja, Sandu, that Jumbel Nishinjang Sondo. That Abaje Chado Baris.
So this quote, all phenomena are the embodiments of momentary thoughts, is something we have to really reflect upon, contemplate really well. So think about the person who said these words, Lord Jikten Sumgön. So he was someone who had a very deep practice when it comes to karma, cause and effect. So he really ascertained the point, the nature of karma in its most refined state. And then when somebody had gained such a very deep understanding of karma, when they then say these words like these words then can generate a real experience of feeling in our mind. So this is why also Gachin Rinpoche, he always mentions this line, all phenomena are the embodiments of momentary thoughts. He always mentions that in his teachings. And so then it generates a feeling in our mind. It's because this experience has arisen within the mind of the one who is saying those words. So actually when we say that when somebody speaks to us, then we can actually get even a slight idea. We can know what really is behind those words, the intention or the state of mind of that person. So all phenomena are the embodiments of momentary thoughts. It's something that if somebody hasn't really gained certainty in that and really reflected upon that for a long time and practiced, gained really a deep practice of that, then one wouldn't be able to say something like that. So just the ability to say something like that also shows that someone has gained a real confidence in the workings of karma. So then now for us, we are, as Buddhist practitioners, of course we do trust in karma. But even though we trust in karma, still it's not like we don't completely disregard karma, but still we are moved by, disturbed by our thoughts. We get distracted by those thoughts. And so because of that, this deep trust in karma does not arise. This complete certainty does not arise. So then, if we don't think about it in this very deep way, if we don't internalize it in this deep way, then it is a very shallow understanding that doesn't become very deep. For example, if you lost, I think, for example, if I lost my mala in my house, then I'm turning the whole house upside down. I'm searching for that object that I have lost, and I'm looking everywhere in the house. And after I have done that, after I have looked everywhere, I can determine that it's nowhere in the house. It's just not there. So then I'm quite sure that it's not there because I looked everywhere. So it is just like that with the ascertaining that all phenomena are the embodiments of momentary thoughts. So here such a person has really gained a deep understanding of what is the nature of karma, cause and effect. What is the connection between the cause and the results, and how do things change momentarily on a moment-to-moment basis? So one has completely reflected upon that. And then based on such reflection analysis, then certainty arises. So one then gains this deep confidence, this certainty in cause and effect.
Tande perna tu tata wa thol sam no tane jumre ke chik sambrang zuk kanda chadu yori shubayina tu tata wa gang tata chorang sam no tong tang ji ke chik perna ma chik o ti ma dang ala gag mari sam ak sam no je khorna ti bote ke jitang le tang chama chorang ma ga wa ji chorang na nang yong yorwa tata rang Timothy Kijaji here by Nayang, Churanga Maduake, Nampachi, Churanga, Yil Mondoake, Nampachi, Churang 2 Yuri. Jimsi, Churang Ketamboni Mate, or Ngala Madangal Gagmari, some of Korsarawa. Then Megevala Megeva Toporanzo. Tata Keji Tirang Tola or Madden. Churang Madele each chimbono you young the cantar some lopa Jimmy Baina. Mate Churang take up Junju Chikayuna, Churang Pacha Lihi and Raja Gono. Kinds of Churang some of the Koran Zansol Tang the Yorwa. Do Tatama Rangtone. That's so just some Dara. Gom Jas is the Jumjet to Tolatesa, the Rabin a Yonkin Dodamando, Yamjendo Gina, the Rabina, Teni, Trunde Yungari Matoke, Te Kekaji Malan, Teni, me Namto Chipo Kan who's in Vedelicate, Teni Trunde Samsung Kalakabon Godova.
So, if you think about this statement, all phenomena are the embodiments of momentary thoughts. So this is something we can reflect upon right now, the way we think in any given moment. So, for example, if you think this person doesn't like me, then whatever that person does, you will perceive that in a dissatisfactory way. Or if that person says something, it will be unpleasant to you. It's because you perceive the person that way. Whatever the person does, then you perceive in a certain way. So if you see the person in a negative way, then whatever the person does, you will see it in a negative way. But on the other hand, if it's a person who you like and who you trust, and even if the person says something actually negative to you, you would actually maybe not even see the fault in there, and you would maybe see it as a piece of good advice. So it just depends on how you perceive things right now in that moment, the momentary thought. So it's something that you really begin to understand when you reflect on that in your practice, when you reflect on this is how karma works. So this is how we should also practice in our meditation, because if you don't ascertain that, if you just try to block out thinking our thoughts, this is not how we gain real certainty in karma, cause and effect.
Yang Jikten the Chen Pu Sardu Sambaranzo in the Ba Che Mampunayan, the Junde Sambaranzo, the Tinus Mion Boyoba, the Rasunko Yore, Tenzan, Ta Tambo Getting Manditola Sambaranzo, Tara Gong Hubandere. Tandela Yang Poktung Sangazo Sanjela Togo Yore. Then the Sanje Rang Song Yabake, the Lojuji Yore, Tehugi. Then the Lojin so Human and the Lojudinga Kitty Zone, Hyondokoyopa Mare. There, Tamju Gombaji Bakorang and Rehe the Sonana, the new Lojit so Mexican Yayobari. The soul of San Tangina Lojun de Gahe take a bed the Tony. 하장게 총대받으나 딱딱 총대바 연구도 도 소르상 당원의 진리의 튼대바지 진리의 가드나 반다로 고도바 진리의 두든 튼바 두든 튼거 여러 추이나 다 다를 둘은 마찬가지 반다로 질 상의 당 저저 이치치 요라 대전제 근데 추랑 그 존상 당원이나 난데 탐게 투기왕게 다지 송용바 코티 로지점 투바이나 양 저솔지 레줌데라 박차야 보이고 토야게 된다게 진랍딘바 데이터베이스 차도 요르바 대인장 되는 로지데 효게
So that all phenomena are the embodiments of momentary thoughts. That is the case also after someone has died. Everything will appear according to one's thought, and also while we are alive. This is how things really ripen. So these teachings also go back to the Buddha Shakyamuni himself. That is why I will share brief story that the Buddha himself had taught. And this is something that I'm not making up this story, but it's also in the like an explanation in a commentary of the Gong Chik. And there are actually some stories that precisely where the example that is illustrated in the story precisely corresponds with the actual meaning that it represents. And that actually is in relation to science. And in science, we're always looking for some kind of proof. And in the Dharma too, nowadays, people are looking for a proof. If you don't have a proof, then we also don't trust in something. So from a Dharma perspective, and these teachings, this story was taught by the omniscient Buddha himself. And then if we hear this, by only hearing a story like that, an imprint of karmic imprint can be placed within our mind of understanding karma. And also blessings, an imprint of blessings is placed in our mind. So that's why I'm telling a story.
Da logic de kangris na sanje niu de yodu tene sunyam la paparis chongcher jeganand. Sunyam la pade ti chang jegla checkar poje yore. Da mind so lag hom do jima chorang su ta ha ko mind checkar poje yore. Tene checkar pote ta sanje la sore sanje sunyam na shu gonang ni at ndawen zigdu te checkar pote tas sanje la sok tna je tene sanje ke chetela churang ngala so do as song tarong te ke yang 지 churang ki na wo dulo na wo chimka mendo we song bari sanje ke chetela
sok sana kar
왕 lan 소르라 되니 저랑
다른 가르치는 게 말해
다 저랑 쳇대다 산제를 나잔라고지 지네 컨트롤로 산네 되고 소르와 산제라 왕 소르와 되 저랑 날 데이터로 소는 수바데가 다른 저랑 진도 반다고도 침금문도 왜송 산제 쳇들라 까물 나와래 시보 참아서나 네 휴자요
아라 찍식티 찍보리 쳔바스마 하고
망보요 알아야
말다 하고 그래
되니 쳇대 다 산제라 컨트롤랑 되니 코랑 데 요사데 지당 레연로 레드나 까까노 칼데 요사 라비오리 로진 이코 되니 마밥 되니 코데 드나베나 다 간터 되니 드나베 데 요바레스 데 게두 되니 산제 펩송아리 파 산제 펩송데 되니 책 되게 더보 버지 요레 디상데라 버지 요레 코 전나나 라브레 되니 코 그때 쳇디 레가가 쳇데사디 칼미파 하고 코 그때 디 쳇디 쳇다워디 샤로로 든즈데 서와 되니 코게 나멀 깨자tin 초란 속에 나게 쳇들라 제 라미와 라브리 랍드 되니 나무데게 나쪽 제 라미 이나야 고다마즈 산제르 히로 산제 펠송 산제 그직 랍송 대체데게 그랑 트혈 만주송스 또다 쳇다보 버지요르 코 휴브 컨트롤 사레다 산제라 다 산제는 초바자로 코 라이번 거요 되니야 야 랜데 산제 야가라 용네 되니 로마 탐제를 추중 걸고 요데데 다 버드미니 야 라이번 거요 되니 산제게 다 기병 탐제 공로마든 티버드 저런서 통근도 왜서 고전 통근도스 디 버드 다다랑 코 종송아이나 드가랑라 종송아이나 혀송아이나라 코냐와를 젠도 그리스 간서 코 따라 해당 랑데도 요리스 더 송리다 다 데드 가래 하고 너 시나 디나니 담보 해당 dara jumde ke chik sampranzuk hibade hedang Gong Chik on Yavala General, the Song do Sanjik. Sanjik Chink Yora ne the name by Jimrekan under. Ta then ko Sanjin do la Yongri. Churanga Chela Kareche by in the Sanjela Cook. You do. Churang Chatela Kejatan Lapa in songs. Then it you kill that Joang Lama Tamji, Hako, you love it. Nak Chet Carrera lab Sanjela Tree. Did on a lagumen churang lang a lam naturang al controsagaris. A taco also arrange major long goes. Ta Sanjake Churang Chete Churang Koran Papa la Johnson, take it you are in the song.
So, Papa.
Pala, the Potic Pala Johnson, teach you are in the song. This Angela Churang Kadashi, the day Kadar in the Yahudu. On the Churang Tama, non the law song. Then it chat the Lakeja shoes, chat the cake on or market. Go her at the Churang Nak Pala, they Yinas Tangi, main lagumen line, but the main test color carbon or the name Napala Ina, the name Churang Tangalatea, just said Zachimbo Bay Yabanda, Tanayuna, the Ningala Sanjake Teju Labdi, the Patek Chatelatina Labri, Napala Ina, the name Churang Jotzachimbo and a Bay Yabanangala, Tunhos. David Tenny Cock Chatelatel Labdi, Chatek, the name Nama Yuku Ya jokes on come Sachaji Yusala, but the cheese one. But the cheese and the Chatek Nag and a non Guratini, Gambat of Barn and a Sato, Barn, the Raja. That Patek didn't sat the Kuyun Roa. The Kuyun that and a Rumboche, Jalaka or Rumboche. Tenny but the Tabe Gatajo, that's Angela Deba, in Tetome Batebajin, Taco Yang Jong Guru Sanjendena. Ta Sanje Yang Chujun Coloko, you the tap Lomantan to the Mountain Tongoes, Tongoes. Quote Tatarang, same person and a call Lyle Gendoguris. Guns and Kotara send a ship day down the Pepa Yoroa. There's on that logite tabajiri, that logite Karakoyurson, Sanje Ranki Jumdeki Sambranzo and Bataran, Tingo, Tatarang Semple, Tatarang Te Younger, Tatarang Te Younger.
There's a story. So the story now is when the Buddha stayed in Shravasti, and so he was going around begging for alms in the town, and so he came to a family's home that had a white dog, and so after the Buddha left, he was at the door. So then he saw that white dog, and that dog was barking at him. And so then the Buddha talked to the dog. He said, like, you keep barking at me, but like, when is it enough? You're still like, no matter how much you bark, you're not happy. So the dog was really angry at the Buddha, and so normally the dog was sitting on this white cloth, but at that time he was going under some kind of a cupboard or so. And so then the Buddha left. And then the owner of the dog, a boy, came home, and normally the dog was sitting on that white cloth, but the dog was not sitting on there, but he was under this kind of cupboard. And so then he went in and he asked his other family members, you didn't say anything to my dog, did you? And the family member said, we didn't say anything to your dog, but the Buddha came by and he said something. And so then the dog went under this cupboard. And when the boy heard that, he got really angry with the Buddha, and he wanted to just go fight the Buddha. So he went to look for the Buddha, and the Buddha was there. Some were teaching his disciples. And so then as the angry boy approached, the Buddha said to his disciples, do you see this boy? And they said, yes. And the Buddha said, if he would die right now, he would be born in hell, because he's really angry right now. And so then the boy came and was really angry at the Buddha. And so the Buddha at that moment knew that all phenomena are the embodiments of momentary thoughts. He knew the workings of karma, that anger leads to birth in hell. And if you die with anger, you're born in hell. So then the boy came in the presence of the Buddha, and he said, "What did you say to my dog?" So the Buddha, again, because it was known that the Buddha has clairvoyant powers and he knows past and future lives. So then the boy said, "If you really have that, then tell me what was that dog in a previous life?" And the Buddha said, I won't tell you because you would get even more angry if I told you. But then the boy insisted and said, "You must tell me." And so then the Buddha said that in a previous life, the dog was your father who has passed away. And so how can you find out if this is true? Go back home, talk to your dog, because the dog apparently understands human language. So talk to your dog and tell him to bring you to an object, a precious object that your father had hidden for you. So then he went back home and he said that if you really are my father from previous life, then if you have a precious object hidden, bring me to this place and show it to me. And so then the dog was wagging its tail and then was leading the boy to some place. He was sniffing around, and then he found that place and he started to dig, and then in the earth, and then the boy started to dig, and then they unearthed some precious jewels, some precious objects. And then the boy was really happy and he began to trust the Buddha. So he developed faith and he was free of doubts. And so then again he came back. He wanted to see the Buddha again. So then again he approached the Buddha, and the Buddha again was teaching his disciples. And again the Buddha asked his disciples, "Do you see this boy approaching?" And they said, "Yes." And the Buddha said, if that boy would die right now, he would be born in the God realm, because his mind is at peace, peaceful and happy, and in a virtuous state. So what this story is to show is that this quote here, all phenomena are the embodiments of momentary thoughts, thus trace back to the Buddha's teachings. And so this is how the Buddha had taught it. The momentary thought, the thought you have in this very moment, determines, if you die right now, it will determine your future birth.
Oh yeah. Thank you. That just chuk but the Tibera.
Can we take a break until 11?
Sunam de Tamje Zibani, Tobani, Bedana, Bazu, de Jugan, Balon, Dubai, Sibon, Zolan, Jo, Chanjo, Sunjo, Ramboje, Maje, Banan, Diva, Nyamba, Member, Yang, Kong, Bewa, Jo, Simji, Neba, Chinhi, Ba, Nurden, Nele, Tajirje. Robe nena male bata dun joma me butter show. May every being ailing with disease be freed at once from every malady. May all sickness that afflicts the living be instantly and permanently healed. Thank you very much.